Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Slides are visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let us. So today we'll discuss the topic on the biochemical basis of fluid therapy, right? So in the last classes, I think all of you have got the materials that I had sent you. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So all of you got
Yes,
the
sir.
material?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So today we'll discuss this biochemical basis of fluid therapy, right? So coming to the topic proper, the different types of fluid, first you know what are the different types of fluid that are present, right? So there are fluids like called intracellular fluid, extracellular fluid, interstitial fluid, then intravascular fluid. Intracellular fluid means fluid present within the cell, right? Extracellular fluid means fluid present outside the cell, okay? But it is present in the interstitial space as well as in the intravascular fluid. Interstitial space means the space between two cells. The space between two cells. The fluid present between the two cells. That is called the fluid outside the cell, but it is present in the space between two cells. So this space, another term also there for this fluid present in the interstitial space, that is called interstitial fluid. That means fluid between the cells in the interspaces of a tissue or situated between two parts. So this is the you call it as interstitial fluid. Okay. Another category of fluid is the intravascular fluid. Okay. That is present within the vessel, blood vessel. Okay. Present within the blood vessel. That is called the intravascular fluid. Okay, so these are the different categories of fluid. Before going to the biochemical base of fluid therapy, let us know regarding the different category of the fluid. That is the intracellular, within the cell, extracellular, outside the cell, but in the interstitial space, interstitial fluid between the cells or in the interspaces of tissue or situated between the parts, intravascular within the vessel, blood vessel. So these are the different kinds of fluid that you may come across, okay, during your this fluid therapy. Now coming to the term homeostasis, what do you understand by homeostasis? Homeostasis means the tendency of the biological system to maintain relatively constant conditions, okay, in the internal environment, okay, to maintain a balance, okay, that is called homeostasis. Every in our body, the homeostasis is of utmost important, okay. So the biological system has to maintain a constant conditions in the internal environment while continuously interact with and adjusting to the changes. Okay. that originate within the system and outside the system. Okay, that means there should be a balance between within the system and outside the system. This balance, maintaining this balance is called as the homeostasis. Now, coming to the different transport of fluid, transport mechanism of the fluid, or the different types of transport of fluid that you will come across. So these are the different categories of transport of fluid that you will be coming across, right? The different category of fluids that you will come across are the what? You can say this is the diffusion. Diffusion is the one type of transport mechanism of the fluid. That is the movement of solutes from what? From a high concentration to a low concentration. Diffusion, simple diffusion. Diffusion does not require energy. Involvement of ATP or energy is not required for the diffusion. Okay. Just there is movement of molecules or solutes from a high concentration to a low concentration. Are you getting me? Slides are visible. Haka, slides are visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So coming to osmosis. Osmosis is the passage of water through a semi or any solvent, passage of any solvent through a semi-permeable membrane from a low concentrated solution to a high concentrated solution. Low concentrated solution means the low concentrated solution means the concentration of the solute in the solvent is less. That means from a low concentrated solution means the water content or solvent content is high, solute content is low. Are you getting me? That is the movement of solvent through a semi-permeable membrane from a low concentrated solution to a high concentrated solution. Or in other words, from a movement of solvent through a semi-permeable membrane from a low concentrated solution means the solvent concentration is high or solute concentration is low. Okay, that is the osmosis. But here the semi-permeable membrane play important role in the osmosis. Filtration, coming to another transport of fluid mechanism, is filtration. The fluid going through a filter under pressure or passes through a material that prevents the passage of certain molecules. This filtration under pressure, that you might be knowing that in the glomerulus of the kidney. Glomerulus of the kidney is the site for the filtration of the blood. Okay, filtration for the filtration of the blood. Glomerulus of the kidney is the responsible for the filtration of the blood. Okay. Now, to another transport mechanism is the active transport. Here, the electrolytes move from a low concentration to a high concentration, and it is against the concentration gradient. Diffusion was taking place in line with the concentration gradient or in favor of concentration gradient. Okay, but not against the concentration gradient. You see, the definition is from a high concentration to a low concentration. That's why diffusion does not require ATP or energy. But the active transport mechanism, the electrolytes move from a low concentration to a high concentration. That is against the concentration gradient. And that's why active transport mechanism always requires ATP or energy. Got this point? So these are the different transport mechanism of the fluid. You can say diffusion, osmosis, filtration, and active transport. Diffusion takes place along the concentration gradient. That's why It does not require ATP or energy, whereas active transport takes place against the concentration gradient. That's why it requires ATP or energy. Okay, so these are the different transport mechanism of the fluid. Okay, now coming to the type of fluid administration, that is called IV therapy or intravenous fluid therapy. Okay, the intravenous fluid therapy means the 75% patients which are admitted to hospital generally receive this type of intravenous. IV stands for intravenous therapy. And 50 to 70% of the average human, you can see the body fluid distribution of fluid is in the average human body is the fluid. Okay, how the distribution is there? 1/3 of this one-third is extracellular fluid, that is the fluid present within the interstitial space or present inside the blood vessels or transcellular fluid. Okay, out of this, 2/3 is the intracellular fluid, that is the fluid present within a cell, intracellular, within a cell, a particular RBC or other cells. Okay. So 1/3 is the extracellular fluid out of the total fluid, and 2/3 is the intracellular fluid. Now, coming to the types of fluid therapy. Okay, what are the different fluids generally which are administered to get relieve a patient or to help the patient recover? These are the different types of fluids which are generally administered as a medium, as a therapy, as a therapeutic purpose, for the treatment purpose. For the treatment purpose, these are the different category of fluid that are administered into the patient for the therapeutic purpose. First category of fluid is the crystalloids. Second is the colloids. And third is the blood and blood products. Crystalloids means these are the water with electrolytes. That form the solution that can pass through the semi-permeable membrane. Okay. Water with electrolytes. Okay. Just which pass through the semi-permeable membrane, and they are lost rapidly from the intravascular space to the interstitial space. Means they move rapidly from the intravascular, from the blood vessel into the outside of the cell, that is the interstitial space. Okay. They can remain in the extracellular compartment for about 45 minutes. Okay. They can remain in the extracellular compartment for a longer period, for more than 45 minutes, or about 45 minutes. Okay. That's why these colloids are required for the fluid resuscitation. Okay, where any fluid loss is there in the body, because they can stay for a longer period in the extracellular compartment, these are mostly used for the fluid resuscitation, which are crystalloids. Okay. And finally, the water from the, because crystalloids, we discussed that these are the water with electrolytes. So the crystalloids diffuse through the intracellular fluid. Okay. So this fluid also can be classified as hypertonic, isotonic, hypotonic, and isotonic. Hypotonic solution means the solution whose concentration is more than the cells from the intracellular fluid. That means if the concentration of the hypotonic solution, as per the definition, is more than the intracellular fluid, that means it can draw fluid into the intravascular compartment from the cells. Okay, you got this or not? Hypotonic solution means it is a highly concentrated solution than the intracellular fluid. High concentration means the solute is more, solvent is less. Okay, and in the intracellular fluid, the concentration is less. That means the solute is less, solvent is more. That's why the solvent present inside the cell can move to the outside. That means because the outside is the hypertonic solution. That's why once you inject the hypertonic solution, then it can draw the fluid from the cell into the intravascular compartment. Okay. Now, coming to the hypotonic solution. Hypo means low, hyper means high. Hypotonic solution means whose concentration is less than the intracellular compartment or intracellular fluid. Hypotonic solution means its concentration is less than the intracellular compartment. So obviously concentration less means the solvent concentration, solvent volume is high than the cell. That's why it helps in the fluid movement here will be from the extracellular compartment into the cell. That's why it helps in hydrating the cells. If you administer hypotonic solution into the patient, then it helps in hydrating the cells. Okay, because the movement of the solvent will be from the outside, that is extracellular compartment, to the inside of the cell. That's why it helps in hydrating the cell. So administration of hypotonic solution helps in hydrating the cells because the osmolarity of the solution is lower than the osmolarity of the cell. Okay. Now, coming to isotonic solution. Isotonic solution means whose concentration or osmolarity is same as the intracellular compartment. Okay, that's why it stays in the intravascular space and it expands the intravascular compartment because the osmolarity is same as the serum osmolarity. Okay, same as the serum osmolarity. So it stays in the intravascular space and it expands the intravascular compartment. So these are the different category of fluid also based on the concentration or osmolarity as compared to blood or serum. Hypotonic, hypotonic and isotonic. Now, these are the different types of slides are visible to all of you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, coming to the next slide, that is the these are the different types of solutions or fluid that are administered into the individual when they fell ill or to the patient. This is their type of their fluid. This is their uses and this is their nursing condition. Coming to the first one, dextrose 5% in water. So this is an isotonic solution. 5% dextrose in water is an isotonic solution. So what are its uses? When it will be administered into the individual, when there is dehydration and hypernatremia. Hypernatremia means excess sodium concentration in the blood. That is called hypernatremia. These are the conditions when you will inject dextrose 5% in water to the individual. Okay. So these are certain consideration that in renal cardiac patient you should use it cautiously. Okay, it can cause also fluid overload. Okay, it may also cause hyperglycemia or osmotic diuretics. Okay, so these are the different types of conditions, the precautions that you will take, and these are different conditions where you will administer or inject this dextrose 5% in water. Coming to the next category of fluid is the 0.9% sodium chloride. 0.9% sodium chloride is otherwise called as normal saline. Saline, you know that saline is injected to the individual patient. This is the composition of that is 0.9% sodium chloride. And it is also an isotonic solution. 0.9% sodium chloride is also an isotonic solution. That means its osmolarity is same as the serum. Okay. So these are the different uses or conditions where we will administer this normal saline. That is in case of shock, in case of hyponatremia, that is decreased sodium concentration in the blood, in case of blood transfusions, or in case of diabetic ketoacidosis. These are the conditions where you will administer this sodium chloride, 0.9% sodium chloride normal saline. Or these are some of the precautions that you should take care. Now coming to the next category of fluid is the lactated ringer or ringer lactate. It is also called as RL, lactated ringers or ringers lactate. It is also an isotonic solution. Okay. So this is these are the different conditions where you will administer this ringers lactate to that individual, particularly in case of dehydration, burn injury. Remember, burn injury. If the individual is suffering from the burn injury, then you should administer this lower GI fluid loss, acute blood loss, or hypovolemia. Okay. So these are the conditions where you will administer this ringers lactate. So this contains potassium. So generally don't use it with renal failure patients. Okay. And some precautions like other people don't use it with liver disease. In case of liver disease also don't administer this ringers lactate. Okay. Now coming to the next category of fluid is the 0.45% sodium chloride. You see 0.9% sodium chloride is called the normal saline. 0.45% is the half normal saline. It is a hypotonic solution. Okay, it is administered in case of diabetic ketoacidosis or any gastric fluid loss from the individual or in case of vomiting. Okay, so certain precautions like you should not administer or inject this to the patient suffering from liver disease or any trauma or burns, right? Okay, so it may also cause cardiovascular collapse. So that's why you should take these precautions. And you should not administer under these conditions, like individuals suffering from liver disease. This 0.45% sodium chloride. Now coming to the dextrose 5% in half normal saline. This is a hypertonic solution. Okay. You can also administer in case of diabetic ketoacidosis. Okay, diabetic ketoacidosis also you can administer. Then it is not indicated for cardiac or renal patients. Okay, cardiac renal patient also not indicated. Sorry, we are discussing this. Now this when blood sugar falls below this 250 milligram per dl, this dex 5% in half normal saline is not recommended. It's not recommended when the blood sugar falls below 250 milligram per dl. Okay. Now dextrose 5% in normal saline. This is also hypotonic solutions. Okay. For the treatment of shock, you can use it. Okay. For the treatment of shock, then it also not indicated recommended for the cardiac or renal patients. Now, dextrose 10% in water is a hypotonic solution, and it is used particularly as a water replacement therapy. And if certain glucose is required, particularly certain conditions, then you can use this. But when certain glucose is required. Okay. So the precautions is that you just monitor the blood sugar at frequent intervals while injecting this dextrose 10% in water. Since you are injecting glucose, so monitor the blood sugar at frequent intervals. These are the precautions. So these are the different types of solutions and what are the conditions where you will administer this and what precaution you should take. Now coming to the next category of fluid is the colloids. colloids. Colloids is the next category of fluids, colloids. So, these colloids contain the solutes in the form of large proteins or other similar sized molecules. Okay, they contain solutes in the form of large proteins or other similar sized molecules, right? So they cannot pass through the walls of the capillaries and into the cells. Okay, these colloids cannot pass through the walls of capillaries or into the cells. They remain in the blood vessels longer period and increase the intravascular volume. Okay, they can also attract water from the cells into the blood vessels. Okay, and prolonged movement can also cause the cells to lose too much water and become dehydrated. So these are the some of the properties of these colloids and what and how they behave once you inject into the cells. What should be there? Okay, so generally remember this. These are the solutes in the form of large proteins. Okay, and they cannot pass through the walls of the capillaries and into the cells. Okay, they remain in the blood vessels for a longer period and increase the intravascular volume. Okay, and they can attract the water from the cells into the blood vessels. Okay, from the cells into the blood vessel, and prolonged movement can cause the cells to lose too much water, and so that's why you should be cautious that there is not excess movement from the cells, so that cells become dehydrated. That precaution you should take care. And these are the different types of colloids which are used or administered to the individuals as a therapeutic purpose. Okay, like albumin, which is a plasma protein, 4% or 20%. Dextran, it's a polysaccharide. Okay, then HETA starch, HES HETA starch, it is a synthetic starch. Okay, that also you can that can also used to administer to the individuals. Mannitol, it is a sugar, alcoholic sugar or sugar alcohol can call is that 5% or 10% of mannitol can also be used. So you can see the uses of this albumin. When you will administer the albumin or plasma protein, the primarily is used to replace protein and also this is also administered in case of individuals suffering from shock to treat as a therapeutic purpose or of the shock, or for the treatment of shock also you can administer albumin. Okay, during the shock large amount of protein is lost from the body. That's why injection or administration of albumin will help in reviving the protein concentration. Okay, so albumin 4% or 20% you can use or you can administer. Okay, this is the primarily used to replace the protein or treatment shock. Okay, so certain precautions you will take care. You will take while administering this albumin or 40% or 4% or 20% to the individual. They may cause anaphylaxis. Okay, that means severe allergic reactions may occur while injecting this albumin to the individuals. Individuals may also suffer from difficulty in the breathing. Okay, so this type of, or there may be swelling of the lips or eyes, tongue. Okay, so you should take care or should take precautions during the administration of albumin. Okay, these are the problems may arise during administration or injection of albumin to the individuals. So you should take utmost precautions that this type of complications does not arise during administration of this albumin to the individual. Okay. Coming to the next category of colloid is the dextran. It's a polysaccharide. Okay. So when you use this dextran is used during particularly to shift the fluids into the vessels. Okay. So for the vascular expansion also you can use the dextran. Okay. For the vascular expansion. Now the precautions will take or certain problems complications may arise that will should take care. They may cause fluid overload. While injecting the dextran, fluid overload may occur or hypersensitivity reactions may occur. There may be risk of bleeding. Okay, so that's why this is not recommended for the individuals suffering from the bleeding disorders. Okay, Also not recommended for the individual suffering from the heart diseases, also from the kidney diseases. So this dextran is not recommended to administer to the individual suffering from the bleeding disorders or heart disease or kidney disease. Okay. Now coming to the third colloid is the Heta starch. Okay, which particularly used at the rate of 6%, 10% is a synthetic starch. It can also use for the vascular expansions. So the complication may arise that may cause fluid overload or hypersensitivity, that you take care. They also increase the risk of bleeding. Okay, so that's why same. Also not recommended for the heart and kidney patient or for the individual suffering from the bleeding disorder. This Heta starch or synthetic starch administration is not recommended. Okay, it's not indicated. Okay. Now mannitol. Mannitol is the sugar alcohol. It can be used as 5% or 10%. So particularly when there is edema in the brain, cerebral edema is there, the mannitol is injected to the individual. Cerebral edema. Okay. When the edema formation is there in the brain, or in case of diuresis, oliguric diuresis, or individual is intoxicated or some toxins have been is there in the individual's body, then this mannitol is injected to the individual. But it may also cause certain complications like fluid overload or electrolyte imbalance may arise, dehydration of the cells may occur. So that you should take care. So these are the different complications may arise, you should take care. Okay. So these are the different types of colloids like albumin, dextran, Heta starch, and mannitol. Okay. Now coming to the next slide, blood and blood products. So crystalloid colloid is finished. Now blood and blood products. So certain individuals may require certain blood and blood products like certain individuals may require plasma only, certain individuals may require RBC only, certain may require WBC, and platelets may be required by some individuals like shown. So the plasma, what is it when it is used or what it causes? The plasma, as you know, is the fluid part of the blood. Blood contains two parts: blood plasma and the blood cells or blood corpuscles, like RBC, WBC, and platelets. So it is used to add the volume to the blood after a large loss of blood. If there is bleeding, severe bleeding is there, so large amount of blood is lost from the body. In that case, plasma can be injected into the individual. It will add volume to the blood. Okay. So individuals suffering from the bleeding disorders also you can administer or inject plasma, right? Then coming to RBC. As you know, the major function of RBC is to carry oxygen from the lungs to other parts of the body, right? And carbon dioxide from the body, from the tissue to the lungs. Okay. So the RBC may be required in case of acute hemorrhagic conditions, okay, or any erythropoietic issue of the bone marrow. As you know, bone marrow is the site of erythropoiesis. RBC is the site synthesis it is the site for the synthesis of RBC, bone marrow. If any problems or any impairment in this erythropoiesis in the bone marrow, that can lead to a severe low RBC count. Okay, so any problems of the bone marrow, particularly for the synthesis of the RBC is impaired by the bone marrow, in that case the RBC administration can be done, okay, to the individual. Or in acute hemorrhage condition also, you can administer RBC to the individual. Now come WBC. WBC, as you know, these are the first line of defense in our body. They help fight infections of different bacteria or any foreign virus. Okay, because they are the first line of defense in our body. Okay, so when the WBC becomes low, that condition is called leukocytopenia or neutropenia. So you can inject this WBC directly to the individual. Okay. Now coming to platelets. Platelets, as you know, they helps in blood coagulation. Okay, so when the platelet count becomes low, in particular some individual also, without affecting the RBC WBC, in certain individuals they may have low platelet count. In that case, only platelet can be administered, injected into the individual. So instead of administering the whole blood to the individual, as per the requirement of the patient or individual, you can administer RBC, WBC, and the platelets. Okay. Now, then coming to the complications of different intravenous therapy is that this is a very simple thing, not to understand anything. Like local complication, that there may be phlebitis, inflammation, pain, right? Hematoma. Then fluid overload may also cause acute pulmonary edema. Electrolyte imbalance may leads to cardiac arrhythmia. Okay. Transfusion reactions also may lead to anaphylaxis. Emboli formation may also take place. These are certain application in intravenous therapy. It's a general thing. While you will be coming to your third year, fourth year, you will be studying more regarding these different types of intravenous therapy in medicine subject. That is not, I'm not discussing. There is nothing much here. Now, coming to the electrolytes. The electrolytes, as you know, these are the minerals in the body fluids which carrying the electric charge, electrolytes, right? Positive charge or negative charge they carry. So electrolytes perform a lot of functions in our body, right? They affect the volume of the water, they affect the acidity of the blood, means pH, broad pH is affected by the electrolytes, and which is very important. Broad pH is very important. Then muscle function, proper functioning of the muscles also requires the electrolytes, as you know. Then other important processes in the body, right? So 6 major electrolytes, as you know, the sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride, phosphate, magnesium, etc. Sodium is the major cation in the extracellular fluid. Remember, sodium is the chief extracellular cation. Okay, extracellular cation outside the cell. Potassium is the major intracellular cation present inside the cell. So there should be a balance between the sodium and potassium level between the outside and extracellular environment of the cell. If that balance is get disturbed, it leads to a serious consequence. Now, calcium is a major cation found in the extracellular fluid. It is also present in the teeth and bone, as you know. Chloride is a major anion found in the extracellular fluid, and phosphate is the major anion found in the intracellular fluid. So this magnesium also a major cation which is found in the intracellular fluid. Okay, so these are the major electrolytes. Now I'll discuss regarding them. Sodium. This normal level of sodium in the body is this 135 to 135 millimole per liter. What are the different functions of this sodium? It is the maintains the extracellular function osmolarity. So I just now I told sodium is the major extracellular cation. It is present in the extracellular fluid. Then it influences the water distribution. Sodium influences the water distribution. It affects the concentration, excretion and absorption of potassium and chloride. It helps in regulating the acid-base balance. It helps in the impulse transmission in the nerve as well as muscle. Sodium. These are the different functions of the sodium. And what will happen if there is low sodium concentration in the blood? That is called hyponatremia. What are the different complications or symptoms that will arise? Fatigue, muscle weakness, muscle twitching, okay, headache, tremor, seizure. You will feel this type of symptoms are observed if the individual's blood contains low concentration of sodium or hyponatremia. Hypernatremia means increased concentration of sodium in the blood. So what are the different complications that will arise? You will feel thirsty. The individual will feel thirsty if the sodium level in the blood is increased. Fever may occur. Okay. There will be oliguria, means decreased urination. Okay. Disorientation. dry, sticky membrane. Your mouth will become dry, or other, you will feel dry, sticky membranes. Okay, these are the different problems, complications arise when the sodium concentration in the blood increased. Now, coming to the next electrolyte is the potassium. Potassium, I told, this is the chief intracellular cation. It is the major cation present in the intracellular fluid. So the normal serum level is 3.5 to 5 millimole per liter. What are the different functions you see? It maintains the cell electroneutrality, maintains the cell osmolarity because it present inside the cell. Okay. It also helps in conduction of the nerve impulse, nerve transmission. It also affects the cardiac muscle contraction. Okay. It helps in acid-base balance also. Okay. The fluid and this sodium-potassium gradient, okay, which is made by a sodium-potassium ATPase, one enzyme present in the membrane of the cell, plasma membrane, sodium-potassium ATPase. Okay. So that helps in maintaining the sodium-potassium gradient between inside and outside of the cell. So if that gradient is disturbed, if that balance is disturbed, so it leads to a serious consequence. Okay. And what are the different complications that will arise if the potassium level is decreased or increased? Decreased concentration of potassium in the blood is called a hypokalemia, right? Which leads to decreased peristaltic muscle. Okay. Muscle weakness will be feeling, you'll feel irritability. Muscle cramps also there. Then fatigue is there, cardiac arrhythmia is there, decreased blood pressure is there. Okay, these are the different problems that will arise due to low potassium concentration. Hyperkalemia means increased concentration of potassium, increased concentration of potassium in the blood. What will happen if under this condition you will feel weakness, nausea, diarrhea? These are the different conditions that will arise because of increased concentration of potassium in the blood. Okay. Okay, Haka, am I audible? Are you there or not? It is audible to all? Shatakshi?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Now coming to the calcium. Calcium is another important electrolyte. It's a major electrolyte. Normal serum level is 2.2 to 2.55 millimole per liter. What are the different functions of calcium? It helps in enhances the bone strength and durability. Calcium, as you know, it is present in the highest amount in the bone as well as in teeth. So it enhances the bone strength and durability. Okay. It helps in maintain the cell membrane structure, function, and permeability. Cell membrane structure, function, and permeability is maintained by this calcium. Okay. And it affects the excitation and contraction of the sinoatrial node, SA node. This is called the pacemaker of the heart, SA node, present in the heart wall. The SA node functioning, its activation, contraction, everything depends on the calcium level in the. Okay. Okay, now this calcium also participates in the neurotransmitter release at the synapses. Okay, the neurotransmitter release at the synaptic junctions at the nerves, you know, the nerve synaptic junction is there. At their neurotransmitter release is carried out by the calcium. Now, in the blood coagulation also, calcium is one of the important coagulation factor. As you know, calcium, there are 13 blood coagulation factors. Calcium is also important coagulation factor. Now, coming to the different problems that may arise, complication. Hypocalcemia means decreased concentration of calcium in the blood. So what will happen? Different problems like muscle tremor, muscle cramps, tetany, okay, tetany, then seizures, then arrhythmia, okay, then numbness in the finger, numbness, you will feel numbness in the fingers, toes, around the mouth. Okay, so these are the problems which arise because of decreased concentration of calcium in the blood. And increased concentration of calcium, that is called this hypercalcemia. What are the problems that will arise? You will feel depressed, fatigue, lethargy, headache. Okay. Then anorexia, constipation, polyuria, excess urination. Okay. Cardiac arrhythmia. Okay. So these are the certain problems that will arise because of increased concentration of calcium in the blood. That condition is called as hypercalcemia. Okay. Now, coming to the next electrolyte, that is chloride. Chloride. So chloride is also the important electrolyte. Its level inside in the serum is the 95 to 110 millimole per liter approximately. But it helps in maintaining the serum osmolarity. Okay. It combines with major kinds to create important compounds, sodium chloride, as you know. Okay. So this chloride is also very important electrolyte in the body, right? Now, coming to this, what are the different problems that will arise because of low concentration of calcium? That is called hypochloremia. Okay, low concentration of calcium in the blood. So there will be increased muscle excitability. Okay. There may be decreased respirations. Tetany may also observe. Okay. Then under conditions of increased concentration of chloride in the blood, you may feel headache. Okay. Drowsiness. Okay. Then deep breathing, muscle weakness. These are the different symptoms or signs of the increased concentration of chloride in the blood. Okay. Now, coming to the next electrolyte, that is the phosphate. Phosphate, the normal level is the 0.815 millimole per liter. Okay. The functions that it helps in maintaining the bones and teeth. It helps in maintaining the cell integrity, right? Plays a major role in acid-base balance. Okay, these phosphates acts as a urinary buffer. Okay, acts as a urinary buffer. That's why it helps in acid-base balance in the body. Okay, then it promotes the energy transfer to different cells. Okay, energy transport to different cells. Then it plays essential role in the muscle, red blood cell, and neurological function. Okay, the phosphate helps in RBC and in maintaining the functionality of the RBC, as well as it helps in the neurological functions. Okay, so the problems or conditions or complications that will arise because of low phosphate concentration in the blood, that is called hypophosphatemia, is hypophosphatemia, lower concentration of phosphate in the blood. So what are the problems? Like lethargy, speech defect, muscle pain, and tenderness. These are the different types of complications that will arise because of lower concentration of phosphate in the blood, hypophosphatemia. Then increased concentration of phosphate or hyperphosphatemia have the complications. Increased concentration of phosphate in the blood. So there will be renal failure. Okay. There may be arrhythmia. There may be muscle twitching. Okay. If there will be the increased concentration of phosphate in the blood, hyperphosphatemia. Now, coming to the next, and this is the last electrolyte, that is the magnesium. So the normal level is 0.7 to 1.05 millimole per liter. Okay, mole per liter. The magnesium function of the magnesium, that it is important in the carbohydrate and protein metabolism. Okay, many of the enzymes, they require magnesium as a cofactor in the metabolism of the carbohydrate proteins. Many of the enzymes which are required in this metabolism of carbohydrate proteins, they require magnesium as a cofactor. Okay, they helps in the acts on the myoneural vasodilation. They facilitate sodium-potassium movement across the membranes. Okay. They influences the calcium level. So the conditions or complications that will arise because of low concentration of magnesium in the blood is that you will feel dizziness. Okay. Mental confusion will be arise. Tremor may have, muscle tremor may occur. Seizures you may feel. Okay. Then cramp the legs and foot. Hyperirritability, arrhythmia, anorexia. Now tendency may be there because of higher, lower concentration of magnesium in the blood. And the conditions that will arise because symptoms that may occur because of higher concentration of magnesium in the blood are that drowsiness, lethargy, coma, arrhythmia, hypotension. Okay. Then facial passing, peripheral vasodilatation. Okay. Then the weak. So these are the certain conditions which may arise because of low magnesium. Because of the high magnesium concentration in the blood or hypermicremia. So this is all about the different biochemical basis of fluid therapy or different types of fluids like crystalloids, colloids, blood and blood products. This is there in your syllabus. And regarding the different electrolytes, what are the symptoms, signs that may arise because of increased concentration or decreased concentration of particular electrolyte. Okay, thank you all. So next we'll join tomorrow. Thank you all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.